So I bet you're wondering, should you buy the cheapest roof camper that you can find on the internet, even if you don't currently have anywhere to put it? I don't know, but I did. So as is pretty common for me after I buy something, I scramble and try and figure out how I'm going to actually use the thing. I'd gone camping with Chicken Nugget in the back of the other camper that I'd built, and rather than trying to insulate that or make it easier to get into, I figured I'd just start an entirely different project that would cost me more money. I measured out all the base lines of my truck again, realizing that I just absolutely don't have any understanding of what numbers is. You would think after all this time of measuring stuff I'd be better at it. I pretended to clean up my workspace and grab some scrap material that I was planning on using to build this rack out of. Did a lot of guesstimate measuring to get kind of base ideas of what the entire thing was going to look like. Once I got all the material into place and kind of had some semblance of what the rack was going to look like, I started chopping and tacking stuff together. Luckily for me, there was a lot of scrap material in my garage, so when I made cuts that were completely the wrong size, I just made new cuts and used a second piece. At this point, I had most of the cuts that I needed to build the base frame in a shape that was going to work. And to stabilize the piece of metal that I'm working with, this is Bill. No, you don't think Bill's good enough? You don't think he deserves to support his family? I'll have you know, Bill is a solid block of stainless steel. In fact, out of everyone in the video, Bill is the only one that's actually qualified to be doing what he's doing. So with Bill's help, I started tacking and welding stuff together. This is just to get it, mostly stable to a point that I could start fighting around with it and throwing it to different spots. And I'm sure by this point you've all noticed that there's kind of a problem with my welding environment and the things that are around me. The first thing you should do when you're welding is clean up your area. Make sure there's not propane tanks that are next to the material that you're welding on, because propane explodes. So I'm sure at this point you're kind of aware this is not really a how-to video. This is more a how I did it video. You can follow along, but definitely don't use the same techniques. Make sure your workspace is cleaner than mine, because just look at this entire area could just catch on fire. I took a bunch of scrap wood and put it together in a way that it would kind of stabilize this frame and let me, just line stuff up in a way that would sort of make sense to the design that I was going for. There's no real measuring or anything involved. I just cut chunks of scrap that I had lying around. Once I had kind of what I was looking for, I clamped and tacked stuff together until it started taking shape into something that looked sort of what I was going for. And somehow I looked out pretty good. It fit pretty much exactly with my truck when I slid it onto the back of the truck bed. And this is where it kind of fell apart. Unfortunately, I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about the different ways that weld slag can affect different materials that it's around. And it turns out that glass is not particularly fond of weld slag smacking into it. There's also the whole truck bed and the rest of my truck, that this was probably the most dangerous thing I could have done while I was learning how to weld. So if you can take anything away from this video, it's you should absolutely buy a welding blanket and pay really close attention to any of the stuff around you when you're welding, unless you want to have specks of metal inside of your glass. Unfortunately for my truck, none of this deterred me, and I kept going by adding different bracing supports to the base structure. At this point I was at least a little bit safer by attempting to extend parts of the truck, or parts of the rack out of the truck. Thinking back on it, it really didn't improve anything. I just had it making slag in different locations. Luckily, the only thing that it hit was the actual tailgate, and nothing seemed to get really too damaged. But again, if there's anything you can take away from this video, please buy a welding blanket. So at this point in the game, I was feeling pretty burned out. I'd seen a lot of stuff break and not do what I wanted to. Damage to my truck, and it was time for bed. Is it time to go inside? We're going inside? Oh, don't leave my cat alone. Luckily, after sleeping, my body was like, hey, yeah, you can do this again. Why not just go and make more bad decisions? I took the toggle clamps and adjusted them down to size so that I could use them to secure the rack to the truck frame thing, the truck to the rack. I used the toggle clamps. I took more scrap metal that was used for some type of holding racks or something, and I smushed it down to get sort of a angly, clippy, hooky thing that I could then attach to 3D printed bed rail mounts for the Tacoma. And I don't want to hear it. Yeah, I get it. Like, should I probably not be using that to mount it to the bed? Yeah, but like the thing is a bajillion pounds, and this is really just to keep it from sliding around and keep it from rattling. Like the rack's not going anywhere. Once I'd cut out that first piece, I went through and cut out 3 more to the sizes that I needed to, made sure that the adjustments fit and they were relatively similar to each other. Next, I welded the toggle clamps onto the existing scrappy rack thing that I put together. And again, here I am making the bad decision of welding directly next to my truck. Unfortunately, I tend to not learn lessons as quickly as I should, but the toggle clamps went on good, so there's something that came out of it. To get them on, I just put a spring clamp on and did a couple of tacks on either side before going across the back and welding the entire thing relatively weldy to the rack. Once I'd gotten the welding done, I went ahead and tested the toggle clamps to make sure that they would close, and they were a little bit more springy, but luckily these toggle clamps do have locks, so I can just put a screw into them. At this point, my rooftop tent had arrived. I was pretty excited, and it turned out to be a lot heavier than I expected. I almost dropped it like 6 times. I eventually did drop it, but not in this shot. I popped it out of the box and put the rack on top of it to check and see the fit, and make sure that the different positions that I had would go along with what was actually on the frame. The next, I started sanding, well, like scraping, removing all the stuff, de-rusting, and then spray painting, getting the rack to look sort of like something that you could buy. It doesn't up close, but like from this shot, it looks pretty cool. And this is where I started to actually feel happy about some of the progress that I've been making. I was able to put this on, make a relatively large scratch on the back of my truck. I'm a pretty firm believer in that trucks are trucks, and obviously we should take care of them, but like sometimes trucks get scratches. The toggle clamps worked out really well this time. Everything would sit together a lot better, and obviously it was structurally sound enough that I could have hung off the back. And this part was a little bit sketchy. I don't remember the exact weight of this roof camper, but it's definitely more than one person should attempt to lift at one time. But I didn't feel like trying to call up a friend, and nobody else was around to help me, so yeet, I guess. And once it was up on top of the truck, it was easy enough to scoot around and get into the correct position. And that was the worst of it. Once it was up top, it opened up easily, and this thing is way better than I was expecting. I think I ended up paying about $1,200 entirely for the camper itself. And then the rack was, just the cost of the materials that I had in my garage and my time. And camping in this thing, while it's kind of tough to get the dogs in, is absolutely phenomenal. It's just super comfortable. It feels much better than being in the bed of my truck. The insulation on the bottom and top of it is phenomenal. The tent breaks the wind if it is windy out. It's just so much better than the truck camper that I built. And that's not to say that I'm not going to improve the truck camper that I put on the back of the Tacoma. I had a lot of fun building that, and it was kind of disappointing when I actually did go camping, and it felt pretty awful. But in the meantime, I want to be able to camp, and I was really sick of not being able to put stuff in the back of my truck when I had the camper on the back of it. And this kind of is the best of both worlds. I can, throw a grill in the back of it, and I can immediately pop the camper and lay in the back after, finding somewhere to sleep. If you're interested in seeing a review of what the actual topbee camper feels like, looks like, and kind of how it operates, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I haven't had a chance to really sit down and do a full top-down review of it. I love this thing. It's phenomenal. Absolutely worth the money. But I haven't really had a chance to kind of go into what all it acts like and how it do thing. And if you have any comments or suggestions or really anything you'd like to see as far as builds go, leave a comment. Tell me more about what you think I should build. I have not enough free time, and I tend to focus a lot of my builds on things that I would enjoy to see or I would enjoy doing. But I would like to know what you'd like to see. I spend a lot of my time on the stuff that I like, but if other people have other things they'd like to see, I'd like to hear about it, and maybe it's something I'd like doing. One of the things I'm considering is fully enclosing the bottom of this camper. I've also thought about trying to build an entirely new camper that has access from the top, like an actual wedge style that most people seem to be interested in building. And then there's the other option of building an entire crow economy where I teach crows how to do taxes, which I'll be real, that's absolutely going to happen. It's only a matter of time. So yeah, if you made it this far in the video, thanks. You spent a lot of time watching this, and I've kind of just been rambling for the past 20 minutes. But let me know what you think. Tell me what I should do.